everyone, thank you for joining us and welcome to today's webinar, Reasonable Adjustments, How to Get Them Right. My name's Karen and I'm your organiser for today. I'll be supporting today's presenter, who is Vicky, by helping behind the scenes, talking you through some of the questions we are receiving and carrying out a couple of polls.
So hello everyone, my name is Vicky and I'm your presenter for today's webinar, Reasonable Adjustments, How to Get Them Right. So before we get started, just a little bit about who Acas are and what we do. We provide employees and employers with free impartial advice on workplace rights, rules and good practice. We also offer training and we'll let you know about relevant training courses for today's topic a little later, including how to book. We help resolve disputes. Our online advice is updated regularly, where you can find the latest information on reasonable adjustments, along with wider workplace advice for employers and employees. Our website has a number of free template letters, forms and policies for employers, HR managers and employees, which are free to download and use. And Karen will share a link in the chat to our website. So now let's look at what our webinar will focus on today. You will gain an understanding on what reasonable adjustments are, how to implement reasonable adjustments, including examples. We will discuss practical strategies to build an inclusive workplace. And finally, we will look at further support available. So in this section, we will explore what a reasonable adjustment is. We will outline employers' legal obligations and offer examples demonstrating how reasonable adjustments can effectively support employees. So what is a reasonable adjustment? A reasonable adjustment is a change or adaptation made in the workplace to support the needs of an employee with a disability. Adjustments can vary depending on the individual's needs, and these may include making a physical adjustment to the workplace. For example, adding contrasting strips to glass doors for employees with low vision. Changing working arrangements. This could be adjusting start and finish times, allowing more breaks, or allowing the employee to work from home. Providing equipment, services, or support, such as an adapted keyboard for someone with arthritis, or having certain tasks be demonstrated by a mentor if verbal instructions are harder to process. Adjusting a role or duties, for example, reducing phone calls for someone may be an effective reasonable adjustment for mental health. These are just a few simple low-cost examples of reasonable adjustments that can be made. The key is to ensure that the adjustment is tailored to the individual's needs and circumstances. So we have already discussed a few potential reasonable adjustments and where they may be suitable. On this slide, we have provided a few more examples. This list is not exhaustive and is intended as a starting point to help you consider the different types of reasonable adjustments that are available. These examples cover visible and non-visible disabilities. I will not expand on each one, however, I will explain a few of them. For example, adjusting or removing tests. Tests for suitability for promotion or job interviews should be designed to be not unreasonably disadvantaged disabled people. Removing them from the process may be a reasonable adjustment. Another example is modifying procedures. Some disabled people might need time off for reasons related to their disability, for example, if they're too ill to work or going to medical appointments. A reasonable adjustment may be to modify trigger points, for example, increasing the number of absences that will trigger a review. Another example of a reasonable adjustment could be recording disability absence separately to another sickness absence. This is sometimes known as disability leave or disability-related sickness absence. The Acas website has useful advice on disability-related absence, and you can find relevant links in your handout. A person with a disability that needs a reasonable adjustment should communicate with their manager or employer or their potential employer if they're applying for a job. This allows the individual to explain their circumstances, enabling the employer to understand how best to provide support. Together, they should collaboratively discuss and agree on suitable adjustments. There are several ways someone may request a reasonable adjustment from their employer. On this slide, we will discuss the potential ways this may be done and how best to handle the request. An employee may notify their manager or employer directly in an informal discussion or meeting. If this is the case, actively listen and pay close attention to the employee's needs and concerns. Take notes on specific adjustments requested and how these will best support the employee. Then schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss potential solutions and next steps. A written request should be handled similarly. Acknowledge receipt by responding promptly to confirm you have received the request. Carefully consider details and arrange a meeting to discuss the request in more detail. An individual may prefer to approach the HR department to discuss adjustments and seek their assistance in communicating with the relevant managers. If this happens, work closely with HR to understand the request and identify a reasonable adjustment. Coordinate with relevant departments and collaborate to find a solution. A medical report may be submitted or used. Promptly acknowledge the medical report and thank the employee for sharing. Ensure all medical information is kept confidential. If necessary, consult with experts to gain insights into the best ways to accommodate the employee's needs and tailor adjustments. Organisations may have internal systems or platforms to submit requests or concerns related to workplace adjustments. Respond promptly to requests through the internal systems, monitor the status of the requests, and ensure timely implementation. Ensure you provide regular updates to the employee and seek feedback on the effectiveness of the adjustment. Before I continue, I just want to take a moment to thank all the advisors on today's webinar who have been answering your questions. Remember, you can close the Q&A box if it is distracting, and we will remind you to copy and paste your questions at the end. So regardless of how an employer is notified, it is good practice when handling a request to listen to the person and try to understand how their disability affects them. Consider the person's specific situation and do not make assumptions. This may involve different adjustments for individuals with the same disability. Everyone's experience is different. Include the employee in the decision-making process. This will ensure adjustments meets their needs. The employer can consider getting medical advice if they need help to decide what adjustment is needed. For example, the employer could agree with a disabled member of staff to get an occupational health assessment or ask the person's doctor. We have included a template letter to an employee's doctor in your handout. If a reasonable adjustment is agreed, act promptly and implement it without delay. Maintain open and clear communication with the employee to ensure they feel supported. If implementation is delayed, try to come up with a short-term solution. Review and record. This should be done regularly, for example, every 6 months or if something changes. Consider using a reasonable adjustment passport. This is a document created by an individual and their employer and ensures that each reasonable adjustment is correct, practical, and up to date. It also means that an individual can take information about their reasonable adjustments with them if they change jobs or line manager. If you want to know more on reasonable adjustment passports, there is information on gov.uk. We have put the link on the slide, which you will be able to click on when you download the slides. An employer does not have to make adjustments that are unreasonable. However, they should still find other ways to support the individual. On the next slide, we will look at what reasonable means. Remember, this webinar is a brief overview of the key points when implementing reasonable adjustments. The process can be complex and difficult to navigate. Consider the full-day training event for a more in-depth breakdown of making reasonable adjustments tailored to an individual's needs. So what is reasonable depends on each situation. The employer must consider the adjustment carefully and should think about the following questions. Will the adjustment remove or reduce the disadvantage? So, will it be effective? It should address the specific challenges that the employee faces due to their disability and enable them to perform their role. Is the adjustment practical and feasible for the employer to implement? This means considering factors such as resources, impact on business operations, and costs. Is it affordable? The employer is responsible for paying for any reasonable adjustment. Many adjustments are simple and cost-effective. However, there can be instances when an employer might not be able to afford an adjustment. Access to Work is a government scheme that can help people with a disability to get or stay in work. Someone may be eligible for a grant to help pay for practical support. This is not a substitute for the employer's legal obligation to make reasonable adjustments or pay for them, but it is a useful resource to be aware of. You can find a link to the Access to Work in the handout we have provided. And finally, is there a possibility the adjustment could harm the health and safety of others? For example, someone may require specialist electrical equipment. The equipment may increase the risk of an electrical hazard or obstruct walkways. To address those concerns, an employer should have an electrical safety assessment conducted and review the workplace floor plan to see if there is a suitable place for the equipment to be set up before refusing the request and consider alternatives. A reasonable adjustment should balance the needs of the employee with the practical capabilities of the employer. Under the Equality Act 2010, employers have a legal obligation to make reasonable adjustments for employees with disabilities. Failure to meet these obligations can lead to legal consequences, such as employment tribunal claims for disability discrimination and failure to make reasonable adjustments. Who is protected? The law states that employers must make reasonable adjustments for job applicants, employees, workers and contractors, or self-employed people hired to personally do the work. Employers must make reasonable adjustments when they know or could reasonably be expected to know someone is disabled. This is also the case if the individual hasn't disclosed that they are disabled. If the employer could reasonably be expected to know about the disability and about the substantial disadvantage the employee is placed under, then the duty to make reasonable adjustments will still arise. So I'm going to hand you back over to Karen, who's going to take you through a case study. Over to you, Karen.
Thanks, Vicky. So this case study, we've got to have Al. So Al has been on a long-term sick leave for the past 3 months due to chronic back pain. Al's absence has been challenging for both her and her team, and she's ready to return to work. Al's employer recognises the importance of sustainable accommodations to ensure her return to work is smooth and to reduce the risk of further absence. During Al's return to work meeting, Al's manager conducts a confidential discussion to understand what support is needed and if reasonable adjustments can be implemented for her return. Al and her manager agreed to an adjusted workload to allow regular breaks and task pacing. They also set a date for an ergonomic assessment to help Al manage her back pain. They also agree regular check-ins to review the adjustment's effectiveness. This case study illustrates the importance of proactive measures and collaborative efforts in supporting employees returning to work after long-term absence. The key points here are good communication to understand needs, implementing reasonable adjustments promptly, and providing continuous check-ins and reviews. I'm going to hand you back over to Vicky to continue with the presentation. Over to you, Vicky.
Thanks, Karen. So in this section, we will take a closer look at what an employer should consider when implementing reasonable adjustments, and we will discuss some of the challenges you may face and how to overcome them. Some of the key points for you to consider when implementing reasonable adjustments are tailoring adjustments to individual needs. To do this, engage in open and confidential discussions with the individual to find out what support they need. Ensure a consistent approach by all. To achieve this, develop clear policies on reasonable adjustments that comply with legal obligations and provide guidance. And we will discuss what to include in a policy later in the presentation. In addition to discussing workplace adjustments with the individual, input from specialists can help you understand the effects of their disability and how to accommodate them. Contact occupational health services and medical professionals. Smaller organisations might not have an occupational health policy or scheme. In this case, the employer should take the advice of both the employee and the employee's doctor. Set realistic timeframes and goals. Calls to the Acas helpline mentioned that where reasonable adjustments were agreed, it took a long time to implement, and employees were having to chase up their completion. This can be stressful and cause a breakdown in working relationships. If a reasonable adjustment is going to take a considerable amount of time to implement, find a suitable alternative to support the individual and provide clear and ongoing updates during this process. And finally, regularly review adjustments, making improvements based on feedback if needed. Please use our advice page on occupational health assessments for more information. As a reminder, you will be able to click on the link when you download the slides. Implementing reasonable adjustments successfully depends on understanding and empathy. Training and awareness initiatives will contribute to a more supportive and empathetic workplace culture, reduce stigma and dispel misconceptions associated with disabilities. This should encourage an inclusive environment where all employees feel valued and respected. Detailed training on implementing reasonable adjustments for managers and supervisors will provide the skills needed to confidently address any challenges that may arise. Managers will also gain knowledge of legal obligations, reducing the risk of discrimination claims and fostering a fair workplace. Regular newsletters or emails highlighting success stories and best practices will build awareness and better understanding. Employers could create an internal portal with resources and information on reasonable adjustments. This could encourage employees to disclose that they have a disability. Employees who feel like their disability does not require a reasonable adjustment, who are fearful of what might happen if they do, often end up disclosing at the tipping point, preventing early intervention. Creating an inclusive workplace where reasonable adjustments are understood will encourage early disclosure, ensuring adjustments can be implemented at the right time. This can contribute to higher employee satisfaction, engagement and retention. Acas provide free e-learning on equality, diversity and inclusion. The module is self-paced and is a mix of theory and case studies. You can access this learning through the link in your handout. Embedded reasonable adjustments within company policy and grievance processes to ensure a consistent approach by all staff. An inconsistent approach by managers can be problematic. Instances where an employee has a change of management with a new manager who has a more negative approach to reasonable adjustments could lead to a dispute. Creating a standalone, clear, comprehensive and accessible reasonable adjustments policy can support all employees. A policy could open with a policy statement committing the organisation to equality, diversity and inclusion, recognising their legal obligations under the Equality Act 2010. Explain the objectives of the policy and outline the benefits of reasonable adjustments for both the organisation and the employees. Define who the policy applies to, specify that it covers all types of disability, including physical, mental, sensory, or neurodiversity. Provide a non-exhaustive list of potential adjustments, and outline the steps employees should take to request adjustments. For example, who to contact and information required, such as the nature of the disability and type of adjustment needed. Describe how a request will be assessed and if there will be involvement from occupational health professionals. Outline what the considerations are when agreeing to the reasonable adjustment, for example, cost and practicality. Also, outline the process of implementing approved adjustments. Various stakeholders may be involved in the process, such as HR departments, managers, and health professionals. Make sure everyone's roles and responsibilities are clear, including the employee's responsibility to make the request and provide any necessary information. Other considerations to include are that information related to disability and adjustments will be kept confidential and comply with GDPR. Provision of a clear process for employees to appeal decisions or raise a complaint about the handling of their adjustment request, and how often the policy will be reviewed. So we're now going to take a look at overcoming challenges and barriers when implementing reasonable adjustments. So employers may face insufficient resources or budget to implement adjustments. Try to prioritise adjustments based on necessity and ones that will have the biggest impact on supporting the individual. Seek external funding or grants dedicated to supporting workplace adjustments for disabilities. Collaborate with government programmes or non-profits that offer financial assistance or resources. If none of these are possible, find alternative adjustments that are low to no cost that will also support the individual. Another barrier can be resistance to change or lack of support from management or senior leaders. Engage senior leadership by highlighting the benefits of an inclusive workplace, such as increased productivity, morale, and talent retention, as well as the legal obligation you must abide by. Provide success stories to illustrate positive outcomes. Offer training to managers to foster supportive attitudes and build confidence when implementing reasonable adjustments. Workshops and e-learning modules can increase understanding and empathy for all staff, but are particularly important for managers. Employers may experience difficulty in identifying the appropriate reasonable adjustment. As mentioned previously, work together with your employee to agree reasonable adjustments. They are the best place to know what will support them. Their experience of their disability will be different to someone else's experience with the same disability. Take mental health, for example. Everyone's experience of mental health is different, and mental health can fluctuate over time. This means that identifying, agreeing, and monitoring reasonable adjustments can take time. It also relies on open, honest dialogue with support from occupational health professionals or disability experts giving extra tailored advice. You should be able to find a solution. You can also utilise free online guidance through the Acas website and the Equality and Human Rights Commission, links to both of which are in your handout. Communication barriers between employees and managers can provide a challenge. Provide training on effective communication strategies and use anonymous feedback mechanisms to identify and address concerns. Create multiple channels, meetings, emails, or suggestion boxes for employees to express their needs. This will all go towards fostering open and inclusive communication between employees and managers. In the full day Making Reasonable Adjustments training event, we provide a whole section on how to discuss reasonable adjustments in the workplace with an individual. Some other things to consider when challenges arise are to encourage continuous feedback from employees to develop target solutions. So we're now going to discuss another case study, and I'll hand you back over to Karen to go through this with you.
Thanks, Vicky. So we have JJ. JJ is a new data analyst at Techie Solutions Limited. JJ is neurodivergent. They have not had a formal diagnosis, but their doctor has referred them for an autism assessment. JJ finds the lack of structure in this role difficult, and generic instructions for work projects has meant incomplete tasks. So despite being highly skilled, the high pressure environment has had an impact on JJ's mental health. They have become withdrawn and their productivity has decreased. JJ's manager, Tom, has recognised a change in JJ's behaviour and has concerns. Tom initiates an informal discussion to understand JJ's needs better and to see if support can be provided. In this discussion, JJ discloses that they are autistic and are awaiting a formal diagnosis. JJ expresses difficulties in concentration and coping with stress when there is little to no routine. They also struggle to follow generic instructions. So what should Tom do next? So on this slide, we will look at what good practice might look like through the steps Tom takes. So Tom holds a separate confidential meeting with JJ to discuss the challenges they are facing and identify potential adjustments. This is scheduled with enough time to allow JJ to consider what support is needed, but conducted promptly to reduce the risk of any further negative impact. In the meeting, Tom encourages JJ to take the lead and suggest what adjustments they think would be beneficial. Tom is patient and uses active listening skills. JJ asks for instructions to be specific and in writing, and for a structured work environment, which includes the implementation of project management tools to provide clear task lists and deadlines. They also ask for increased breaks to manage stress. This is a short-term measure which will be reviewed at Tom and JJ's next meeting. So the adjustments are agreed, and during their implementation, Tom regularly checks in with JJ. They agree set times and dates for when this will be done to allow JJ structure. This regular check-in provides an open feedback loop, allowing JJ to communicate any ongoing or new challenges. This communication continues after the adjustments have been put in place to ensure they are still effective. The implementation of these adjustments has led to significant improvements to JJ's mental health and work performance. This case study demonstrates the positive impact of personalised adjustments and the importance of a proactive approach. So the key takeaways from this case study are understanding and addressing individual needs, which is crucial for adjustments to be effective. A proactive approach and early intervention can prevent things from escalating. Don't focus on disability or a diagnosis. Aim to find solutions to support the individual. And provide ongoing support beyond implementing the adjustments. This can be via regular reviews and check-ins. I hope this case study has been useful to demonstrate good practice measures for implementing a reasonable adjustment. Now I'm going to hand you back over to Vicky. It's over to you.
Thanks, Karen. So before we move on to our next section, I am going to take some time to go through a couple of questions about reasonable adjustments that we are frequently asked at Acas. Remember, if you have any questions today, we have advisors available on the webinar to answer them. You can close the Q&A box if it's distracting, and we will remind you to copy and paste it at the end. So our first question is, I'm a small business owner with very little resource, and I want to support my staff. I have an employee who has an anxiety and has requested to work from home as a reasonable adjustment. If we agree, how long do we have to make the reasonable adjustment? I'm concerned it will take some time. And the answer to this is, reasonable adjustments should be implemented as quickly as is practical. undue delay in making adjustments might be considered discriminatory. However, timeframes can vary depending on the nature of the changes. If you agree, you should keep your employee up to date with the progress of the adjustment being made and try to find a short-term solution. For example, frequent breaks or reduced hours till the reasonable adjustments can be implemented. Primarily, as soon as you learn or may reasonably be expected to anticipate the necessary adjustment, you should take action to implement it. And the next question is, we have someone coming back to work after long-term sickness and they have requested returning on reduced hours as a reasonable adjustment. If we agree, does this mean the new working arrangement is permanent? And the answer to that one is, reasonable adjustments should be reviewed and updated over time. This is to ensure they remain relevant and effective in meeting the individual's needs. In this example, the employer could agree to this adjustment on a temporary basis and conduct a review on an agreed date to see if something more long-term is needed to be put in place or if the adjustment is no longer needed. So we're now going to take a look at creating an inclusive workplace and looking beyond disability. Workplaces should advocate for workplace environments that are accessible for all individuals and recognise that tailored support can benefit everyone. There are several benefits to doing so. It will ensure that the workplace is welcoming to all employees and create inclusivity. An accessible workplace can improve productivity and morale, enabling all employees to work more effectively and comfortably. It will support the organisation in staying ahead of legal requirements and avoiding potential discrimination claims. A focus on accessibility can drive innovation, leading to development of new tools and processes that benefit everyone. Organisations known for their commitment to accessibility can attract top talent and enhance their reputation with customers and partners. Supporting all employees with accessible practices can lead to higher job satisfaction and retention rates. And promoting accessibility creates a more productive and positive work environment, benefiting the organisation and its employees. Promoting accessibility involves creating an environment where everyone can thrive. But how can this be done? Implement universal design principles in the workplace to ensure spaces, tools and systems are usable by all people, regardless of their abilities. Examples include adjustable desks, wide doorways and natural lights. Provide accessible technology and software such as screen readers. Ensure that all digital content, including websites and intranets, meet accessibility standards and provide information in plain English to ensure it is understood by all. Conduct regular training sessions on accessibility. This will contribute to a greater understanding and an inclusive working environment. Ensure that senior leaders actively support and promote accessibility initiatives. Highlight and celebrate ongoing efforts to create a culture of accessibility and inclusion. So we are now stopping answering your questions, so please do not post any further questions in the question box. So today we've been talking about reasonable adjustments. If you would like to know more about this topic, then Acas has a number of free resources that you may find useful. For example, we have advice pages on reasonable adjustments at work and supporting disabled people at work. Our webinars run regularly and we also make past webinar recordings available so that you can watch them at a convenient time. Our free online advice and guidance is updated regularly, and we also have a regular free newsletter to help keep you up to date with new guidance, employment-related news, and scheduled training events. If you're not already one of the 180,000 subscribers, we've put a joining link in the chat and in your handout. And if you would like to leave us a review, We've also included a link to Trustpilot, where you can share your feedback on today's event. Acas also offers a variety of support and training options to suit your business needs and equip you with more in-depth knowledge. Our digital courses are delivered to you via Zoom and will give you the opportunity to interact with our knowledgeable trainers and explore some of the challenges you may be facing. We also offer face-to-face training at various locations around the country, and courses are available for you to book now. We have a wide range of training products to choose from. For example, if you've enjoyed today's webinar, you may also be interested in the following courses: Having Difficult Conversations, Mental Health in the Workplace, and Reasonable Adjustments. We have lots of options to support you, from dealing with workplace problems to developing skills and keeping you up to date with good practice, whichever delivery method you prefer. Acas can also work with you to provide a tailored support for your workplace. Our wide range of training can be delivered in-house for you, either in person or via digital platforms. And we can work with you to diagnose workplace problems and explore practical solutions. If this is something you may be interested in, call our customer services team on 0300 123 1150. We hope that helps, and we really hope to see you on one of our courses soon. So just to summarise then, today we have covered what reasonable adjustments are and how to implement reasonable adjustments. We discussed practical strategies to build an inclusive workplace. And finally, we showed you how to access further free Acas resources, find more detailed training courses, and outline some of the options for tailored support for your business. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And finally, a reminder of the link to the Acas free newsletter to help keep you up to date if you've not already subscribed. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.